Hi, I'm Dr. Morbaja, astrodynamicist, space environmentalist, and associate professor of aerospace engineering and engineering mechanics at the University of Texas at Austin.
Hi, I'm Ralph Dinsley, known as Dins. I'm the Executive Director and Founder of Northern Space Security.
I'm Aaron Burnett, a co-founder of Space Ventures.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
This show is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be what is termed professional advice. The Cold Star Project is proudly presented by the Operational Excellence Society. Cold Star Tech is a supporter of the OpEx Society, and Jason Kanigan is a member of its board of advisors. Talk with us at Cold Star Tech to find out more about the OpEx Society and what we can achieve together in your organization, or just visit opexsociety.org. Thanks for joining us for today's show. Welcome back to the Cold Star Project. This is the start of Season 4, which will generally be with guests who are operational excellence executives at organizations of 1,000 people or more. So to kick things off today, my guest is Joseph Paris. He's the author of State of Readiness, the most profound and mind-changing OpEx book I've read in 20 years. I had him on before in Season 2, and also he was a speaker at the first Make Space Boring virtual conference because I wanted to get him in front of space industry executives who need this kind of thing. He's the founder of Zonatech, a consulting firm that guides other companies to becoming high-performance organizations, obviously using operational excellence tools. And also he started the OpEx Society, which is kind of a place for operational excellence executives to gather and talk and learn. I'm a member of the board of advisors of the OpEx Society. This is full disclosure. And so I thought it would be a great idea for Joseph and I to start things off with a frank discussion of what's going right and what's not so right with OpEx today. Joseph, welcome. We're here for the inaugural Season 4 episode of the Cold Star Project, which is a different thing than what we've done before. And I wanted you back on, and for those who haven't seen Joseph here before, we recorded an episode of Cold Star Project, I think in Season 2, which I'll link to in the description below. And I wanted you back on because, well, I've joined the Operational Excellence Society. I'm a board member. We've gotten to work a lot more over the last, 6-8 months, stuff like that. You were on the Make Space Boring virtual conference too, back when all the pandemic started, and Zoom was new to a lot of folks in the space industry. So now they're bored to tears with it, but it was a great chance to have you get on that stage and be seen by those folks, and they need you, you know. And so what I wanted to start out with is what is the value of a continuous improvement program beyond cost savings? I think this is a key question.
When we think about continuous improvement, we think about Lean and Six Sigma and the Toyota production system. They have their genesis in improving processes. And processes are typically end-to-end, and they want to eliminate the waste. And they want to, delight customers and create, quality products and improve quality of their products and their production processes. And this was, sort of like the genesis of it. But there's I'm going to say a imbalanced fixation on cost savings over everything else. An example. Right now I have a client that doesn't care about cost, doesn't really care about cost at all. The only thing they care about is reliability, uptime, and safety, not in that order: safety, reliability, and uptime. All right. They mine and refine lithium, and the entire value chain in that industry, all the suppliers in the world cannot keep up with demand. So they want to make sure that their machines are running, that they're making product repeatably, and they're not really concerned about the cost because the clients are going to pay whatever they have to pay in order to get that product. So I was reading a report recently, and it's, you have a passion for the space industry, and especially the up and coming private sector space industry. And there was a report that came out that was held in high esteem by some of my continuous improvement peers. And it was from NASA. And, the paper had proclaimed that NASA had saved $1.3 million from their continuous improvement program. Now, I wasn't sure if that was a gross or net. In other words, is that $1.3 million after the budget for continuous improvement was removed or not? So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And I actually did a lot more math, and there was some significant cost savings in labor too. And then the cost savings were such that I think it was beyond the 1.3. In fact, I calculated a burden cost benefit of roughly $70,000 or $70 million. So instead of $1.3 million, let's say it's a $70 million benefit to NASA. But that, a little further investigation said that's over 4 years' time. Okay, so now we're looking at just a little bit under $20 million a year in savings. Now, that might sound like a lot of money, and to a person like you and I, it's a lot of money, right? But if your company has a budget, has revenue of $22 billion, $20 million is nothing. In fact, if we were to translate the dollars into seconds, seconds in time, I calculated out that you're looking at the difference between the savings would be roughly a half of a year versus the budget, which was something like 400 years and change, right? So it's really a drop in the bucket. So for us to look at continuous improvement and for us to try to get the respect and the admiration we desire, right? We're always talking about being starved for support. Well, if you're not generating anything of substance, then you're a nice to have, not a need to have, and you'll get support, but proportionally so. So if we want to get the support we desire and the recognition and the respect we desire, we have to look beyond cost. Okay, we have to look at how much further down the path do my efforts in CI promote the company's vision or progress the company's vision. Now, I did another analysis on the same thing. I don't want to get long-winded on this, but I did another analysis, and in 2007, Apple's iPhone revenue was roughly $600 million. But Q1 of the following year was another $400 million. So what if we could have, through our OpEx efforts, what if we could have brought that Q1 of 2008 revenue into 2007 because we had the product to sell? So I think that for us to really be successful for continuous improvement, not to mention operational excellence, which is a whole different plane, to get the respect it needs, I think that we really have to look beyond the cost, because cost savings themselves, for most companies, is going to be rather boring and not going to get the attention of the CEO that the people need.
Right.
I
agree.
But you've been in operations, right? I mean, this is nothing that's completely new to you. I mean, you've been, you've rolled up your sleeves. You've had some machine oil coming home, machine oil in the past. So you should, this should be not foreign to you. You should be an expert in this also.
Well, yeah. So I went through something called the Operations Management Technical Diploma Program. It was a 2-year diploma program, 1994 to 1996. And there were 50 of us who started that program and 30 graduated, and we took 10 and 11 courses a term. That was a meat grinder. And I have a business degree and some other pieces of paper and that kind of thing. But that OpMan program is the core of the oomph that I bring to the table, However, we were taught a 6-step process improvement course, I guess, or a process, called Shred-em, and I've done videos about what that is and how to make use of it. And it is focused on cost savings and that niggling kind of thing. And I never really liked that at the time. And despite that focus on cost savings, the instructors, and in particular the chief instructor of the program, reminded us, and he said this often enough. He did the Kaplan thing where, you know, they begin to mock you. They've heard it so many times from the person, right? For him, it was not about cost savings and getting people fired and that, because he was like, look, you're going to be perceived as efficiency experts, right? There was an operations management process improvement uniform of the blue suit, the white shirt, the red tie, get in there, scare people, and make cost savings, right? And he said, don't do that. You know, worry about capacity and increasing capacity, not cost savings, right? And so he had the right idea, but it wasn't until late last year, I think 2019, when I ran into your book, which is over there somewhere. And you were the first person that I had encountered, and I've got some beautiful operational excellence books, which I paid a lot more money for, by the way, as well, in between. You were the first person to start talking about operational excellence as not a logistical or tactical level thing, which I had been indoctrinated all that time. That's what it was, right? And you were saying, no, look, it can be a strategic-minded endeavor. And so that completely flipped my point of view about it. So, I mean, I was a plant manager when I was 25. I managed 150 people when I was 26, which is not a lot of people, but for a 26-year-old, it is. You know, I've been part of bigger organizations since. And so, you know, 20 years ago, I was a dictator. I told you this is the way it is from on high. And so I've learned a lot since then, and, you know, not crushed people in quite the same way and gotten them more to be consultative and involved in creating the solution, co-creating the solution. So, but I remember a feeling of isolation as an operational executive. You know, you're kind of out there, you're a cost center, but also you could pay for yourself, kind of like a salesperson in a way, right? You could offset, and so the focus a lot was on not what you were talking about in terms of, you know, increasing and bringing in that revenue from one year or quarter to another. That's very interesting to me, especially as a business owner, right? But our focus is more on just survival and justifying your own existence in that, right? And I think that led to a mistaken focus. I mean, I know it does now. It leads to a mistaken focus on just sort of an ego survival and, you know, persisting, keeping a job, as opposed to opening up the imagination of, hey, what could we achieve here if we applied this stuff on the right level? So what do you think about that idea of isolation as an operational excellence executive? Do you agree or disagree?
Well, you've laid out a lot here. You know, I went through my own transformation, very, very similar to what you just described. In the late 1990s, now keep in mind, I started my business in 1985, so, you know, it's like, you know, 35 years or something I've been at this. But, you know, in the late 1990s, I was very much like that. It was very, you know, and a lot of it has to do with ego. A lot of it has to do with fear. Okay. Fear is a big one. This is my business. Okay. I didn't trust anybody with my business. So I micromanaged people. All right. And, you know, and I don't want to say it was a culture of fear, because that would be, you know, a stretch, because I don't think I was dictatorial, except that I was a bit of a micromanager. I wanted to know, you know, how the people were doing things. You know, I wanted to know the status on a daily basis of pretty much everything that was going on. You know, I was very, very deep in the weeds. And I had the opportunity to go to a conference, early 2000s, and the theme of the conference, it was produced by an investment banker who's become a good friend since then. And I'd never met him or heard of him before. David Deutsch is his name. Great guy, salt of the earth kind of guy. But the theme of his conference was grow or go. So if you're not growing your business, you got to be setting it up to go, you know, get out. And my father always told me that if you're ever the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. Well, I was definitely not the smartest person in this room, and I was absolutely in the right room. But I came away from this conference completely a changed person. And one of the changes that I had was that I have to release to what I'll call the field commanders. If you think about military parlance for a second, the Pentagon says, we have to, take this, objective. But they let it up to the field commanders to figure out how that's going to happen. Because the field commanders are, at the pointy end of the stick. And the Pentagon is there to support them and to give them what they need, and to give them some guidance and some advice, if you will. But at the end of the day, it's up to the field commanders to make it happen or not make it happen. And we have to be able to release to our people. So if we think about the Toyota production system and Toyota in general, they're all about respect for the people. That's one of their pillars, is respect for the people. And I think that in order for us to, get to a level of operational excellence, we have to start with the fundamentals. And our organizations are 100% dependent on the people. And one of the things I want to make sure that it's clear is that I don't believe that operational excellence is something new or aside from continuous improvement or lean or Six Sigma or total production system. I think it is an evolutionary step beyond. Okay, you're not going to get to operational excellence unless you have a systems thinking culture, unless you have a command of improving processes, problem solving. You're not going to get there. Because these are the fundamental building blocks. The only difference really between operational excellence and continuous improvement is, we'll call it the stratification of the discipline. With operational excellence, we're talking about organizations behaving better and operating better as organizations, horizontal integration, not just vertical or process optimization.
Okay. I think I see where you're going on that. I've had a big interest over the last couple of years about helping other companies become true learning organizations, because I noticed that a lot of companies don't document anything very well. And so the story of what happened changes over time, particularly when you've got people who leave or move on from one department to another, and then the people that are left start spinning a narrative that makes themselves the hero of the situation and that. And now we've got a distortion of what happened, and you can't duplicate. Even if you went and talked to those people who remain, the information you got from them, they would think they were being honest, but it wasn't the truth. That information was not the truth. And so you couldn't take that and apply it in another division or something like that, right? Or another business unit. So so helping organizations in that way, I think is important. Now, you mentioned this stratification and this the field commander idea. My mind jumped to the Soviet Cuban Missile Crisis situation, where the ground officers were authorized to launch nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons. So it could get a little scary when you give up. How much power are you giving, right? There's the co-creation is fantastic, and that and I think that's where values come in. And can sort of hold that in check, right? It's, okay, you've got these tools, don't go crazy with them. Well,
yeah, absolutely.
How often do you see that where you've got a sort of distributed organization with a number of business units across territory, physical territory, right? Where people can't just walk, especially today, I guess, with COVID, right? I'm so used to it because I've been doing this for years, this Zoom thing. We had Skype before that, right, of remote work, where you can't just walk down the hall to Joseph's office and talk to him there, right? You've got to you've got a head office, and there's a culture there and kind of a center of the universe sort of attitude, let's say, right? And they've got a lot of resources, but then you've got field offices all over the place with a local OpEx guy or gal. What's the best way to work in that situation or get a good result?
Well, I mean, again, you put a lot of material into that. Getting back to the field commanders, first off, they have to be properly trained, okay? And you have to be able to trust them, okay? There is always the opportunity for somebody to go rogue or to misinterpret or to, simply make a mistake, okay? And, certainly the more kinetic the outcome might be, the more, dangerous, a situation you might be in. And when I talk about kinetics, I'm talking about, within a business, our actions are kinetic. We're going to influence the behavior and the operation of our business based on our actions. And some of them could be more dramatic. Some actions can be more dramatic than others, or the results can be more dramatic than others. So we have to, make sure that the people are properly trained, that they're properly plugged into the organization. In other words, they know what is going on in the organization. They know, where to reach out for help or assistance or guidance or wisdom as they're, executing on their plans. And we have to make sure that we're trying to capture that wisdom every step of the way and standardizing our wisdom. So for instance, if you have multiple facilities scattered here and there, oftentimes multiple facilities will be experiencing the same challenge. And each one of them might be working on how to solve that challenge at the same time. And they might each come up with their own solution. But, is that the best use of the resources? Or would it be better to collaborate and solve that challenge in one place and then replicate it across the others, meanwhile having each of the others working on individual challenges that they face? And in at the end of the day, instead of 3 facilities solving one problem, 3 facilities have solved 3 problems. And then they cross-share that that wisdom that they've gained through their experience.
My brain is working. This is interesting because what if the head office doesn't really know or doesn't have the state of awareness of what's going on out there in their field offices, right? In this remote.
What do you mean, what if? That happens all the time. What if? Imagine that. Imagine that corporate doesn't know. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, how can you coordinate and do that dance, right, that you were just talking about, hey, look, oh my goodness, right? You 3 are working on the same problem. Did you even know that? We didn't know that. What if we had you 3 work on this problem at this place over here right now, right? It sounds so basic, and yet it's missing.
Well, I mean, this comes down to the, basic, communication, collaboration, right? I mean, you have vertical chains of communication, right? Going up and down the ladder, but you also have to have horizontal chains of communication, that cut across the organization, not just in business units, but within business functions. And those communication protocols should not be established with such a level of rigidity as to make everything painful to do or late. I'll give you an example. It was Elon Musk came out with a policy, or was sharing his communication policy or philosophy with some journalist someplace. I forget, whether it was Forbes or Wall Street Journal or whatever. It doesn't matter, I guess. But he was sharing this wisdom, and his policy was that if you have a problem and somebody has an answer that all you have to do is contact that person. You don't have to talk to your manager, to have your manager talk to their manager, to talk to the guy that has the wisdom. You can just pick up the phone and call the guy that's got the wisdom. It's funny. This is a lesson I actually learned, or maybe I already had learned it because I used it. This is probably late 1990s. We did a lot of code cutting in that incarnation of my business at the time. And one of my lead programmers was having a challenge with overcoming some piece of code in Access. So we were writing this in Microsoft Access. And I said, why don't you just, post your challenge out on a bulletin board? Because the client is, getting hot for this. He wants a result. So I said, why don't you just, post your challenge out on the bulletin board, one of those Microsoft Access bulletin boards? And his response was, if I have another day or two, I could figure this out. I said, listen, everything that we need to figure out has already been figured out. Okay, we're not inventing anything new. Okay, somebody has that wisdom. So why don't you post your challenge out there? And while you're waiting for a response, or maybe somebody give you some guidance, you work on the problem. Because at the end of the day, the client doesn't care that you solved the problem. He just wants the problem solved. He hired us to have the problem solved, not an individual. So it was very, very funny. And about an hour or two later, he actually got a response that solved his problem. And I'll never forget the email address. I'm sure it's not valid anymore, but this is like 20 some years later. But the email address was rodriguez@rocketranch.nasa.gov. And I said, see, Robert, it took a rocket scientist to solve your problem. But the thing is, the chances of me inventing anything is minuscule. Okay, it'd be quite by accident if it ever happened. And most of us, it's the same way, especially in the OpEx world. We're not going to invent anything new. We might have some interesting ideas and some notions, and we might try different things, like my, ideas about operational excellence. But the chances of us actually inventing something new is minuscule. You think about operational excellence. The Empire State Building, built in, in just over a year, right? One of my favorite stories of operational excellence is the Apollo 13 mission. Houston, we have a problem. They blew out their oxygen tanks, and they're out in the middle of space. It's not like they could go down to Lowe's or Home Depot and get the hardware they need, right? Everything that they have to solve their problem is within that capsule. That's all they have. They can't get anything else. Okay, and between them and the ground crew, people back in Houston at the space centers and whatnot, doing the simulations, problem solving in real time to get these guys back safely. That's what they had to go through to make that happen. It's an amazing story. That's when I think about operational excellence, that is the kind of performance I'm actually looking at.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't happen all the time.
Hopefully we don't have to get into a huge emergency to initiate that kind of thing. But, what you said made me think about a couple things.
Yeah, but that's great that you said that. Hang on. It's actually
because you talk about the burning problem or whatever. Yeah.
I hate the burning platform, but you think about, I believe that people are often their best when things are at their very worst. So we talked about, Apollo 13. What about COVID? I mean, we're living through it right now. Think about how fast organizations, companies pivoted when they knew that they're going to have to not have people show up at the office anymore. They're prohibited. I still don't know what an essential business is and what one isn't. Put that aside for a second. They immediately sent everybody home and said, you're all working from home. I read just yesterday, Google actually has, or Alphabet has actually extended it, their work from home mandate into the end of summer, September of 2021. So here we are facing a pandemic. One day, everybody's showing up at the office. Next day, everybody's home using Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever it is that they might be using, Teams, to integrate themselves from afar. So I really think that when it comes to business transformation, when it comes to things like operational excellence, the real innovation occurs when there is a truly credible disruptor, something that has truly destructive power. It doesn't necessarily have to use it, but it possesses it. And then we have to, then we have to think in real time. It's not that everybody had the opportunity to collect and analyze a bunch of data for weeks and weeks and weeks on end as to what we're going to do now that the pandemic's here. It's like, Zoom is pretty good, I hear. Let's get 5,000 copies of it.
Right. Yeah, and you're big on time is the enemy. Your book, State of Readiness, you talk about that a lot, and in other articles and that you've written. I'll go back and touch on a couple things from my own experience. The going out and getting solutions that already exist from other people in other places. As consultants and company owners in that, we are often egoically wrapped up in, I have to be the one who comes up with the solution to justify my existence to my client. Maybe it would be good to go to your client and ask them that question just straight up and get them to say, no, you're off the hook. I just want the problem solved, right?
Right.
In the computer programming world, if you were to learn C# or something, you would not program everything. If you were to go program a game, you would learn some fundamentals, and then you would go out and get chunks of code that already do this and do that and put them together and get them to integrate. That might be the harder part, but the chunks that tilt up code were they're already there. Or you can put up bounties and say, look, I want a problem solved. I'm willing to pay X amount of dollars for it. And somebody will go and code that for you. So, and then the idea of communicating inside of your own organization. You brought that up about, hey, just let's have an open communication system, pick up the phone and call to whatever level. I know for a fact there are people listening going, what's the problem with that? Because they've never worked in a larger organization. I have been fired for doing that. I was 26 years old. I got fired for it. So it taught me a very valuable lesson about screening for employers and culture and values and things like that. So you're not always in every organization, and even in the armed forces, there's a chain of command, right? You can't just bounce around and go and talk to whoever you want. So I just wanted to point that out there for folks who are maybe new or don't have much experience. I want to get into tools of OpEx, but before that, Joseph, you and I deal with larger organizations a lot. The Operational Excellence Society sponsoring this program is, talking with organizations of 1,000 people plus very often and getting their products and services out to those organizations. But if you're a little space startup, which is, let's be honest, chances are that's who you are if you're listening to this show, right? You're a founder or an executive of an organization in that. What can you do about operational excellence and instituting these sorts of systems and thinking at your organization? Because we can't wait, right? If you're a space founder, you do not want to wait until you're a 1,000-person company to say, okay, now let's flick the switch.
Well, almost every company starts off with a degree of operational excellence. Okay, because if there's 5 guys in a garage, 5 people in a garage, okay, if marketing wants to talk to sales, wants to talk to product development, all they have to do is spin around in their chairs and say, hey, I want to talk to you. Right. They know each other. They have beers after work probably together. The challenge is an organization grows. You go from a place where, or a condition where everybody knows one another intimately, almost can finish each other's sentences, to more and more and more removed. And as you become more and more removed, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you want to protect your organization, your baby, just like I did when I was starting off. But there's a point where that is more of a hindrance than a help. Okay. And it's very important for an owner or, a founder of a company to understand where that inflection point is. They have to be prepared for the point in their career and the company's trajectory where they are going to have to release. Okay. And they have to set their company up for that opportunity, for that transition. That means that they have to hire the right people. They have to make sure that they're, expertly outfitted and supported. You need to have a way of capturing the communications without controlling the communications, if you know what I'm saying. It's like, being able to pick up that phone, but what happened on that phone call? That result has to be captured someplace. And then it's got to also be able to be shared. So, in most companies nowadays are not the old smokestack industries. We're not making tires and things of that nature. Most of the companies, in the Western world are now knowledge-based. And they might, still mine and refine lithium. They still might drill for oil. They still might make automobiles. But it's much more technology than it is, turning a wrench. Even though there's a lot of wrench turning still. But that collaboration as to, where to turn that wrench, what size they're going to use, and to what torque is all, predestined, if you will. My oldest son works at Lufthansa Technik. And you might or may not know this, but all manuals for all airplanes, at least Boeing, Airbus, Embraer, and et cetera, all those manuals, all those repair manuals are only in English. Okay, there's not like a German version of the 747 repair manual because they want to have zero opportunity for an error in translation. Okay, so communication. You know what I mean? Nobody's able to go off script, when it comes to these standard operating procedures, because then bad things can happen. That's not to say that they're not innovative, but the innovation is controlled, especially the more hazardous the environment or the more perilous a negative outcome can be. You accidentally use the wrong size wrench or bolt on an airplane, and you could puncture a gas tank, and you have a bad day.
Yeah. So looking forward to that moment where you as the founder can release yourself. Because I've seen that so many times. I've helped so many different agencies and organizations that grew to a certain point, 20, 30 people and that. And then the problem they ran into was the founder slowed everything down. The founder wanted to be, maybe they'd gotten okay about stepping away from sales, but they still wanted to be involved in making all these core decisions about what systems we use, what programs, et cetera. And you got to get out of that. If you're a founder, I've said this as the founder of Cold Star, I don't give a damn what CRM we use, right? I could care less. I'm not even going to look at it, really. Somebody, so, being able to step away from that. And it can be hard because a lot of startups, founders create businesses that are psychological extensions of themselves and serve to kind of feed them the emotions and that they need. And so they're in these high pressure situations where they're the savior and they need to come in and swoop in and save the day kind of thing. And if you're stuck in that mindset, you're not going to grow. It's just not going to happen. So, So
and getting back to that, knowing, being the smartest person in the room. All right. The challenge is that there's a point in time at the founding of the company that the founder probably is the smartest person in the room. They've got the vision. They know how it's going to work. They want to put it together. But as, the companies evolve, the technology evolves, the materials evolve. And the founder of the company, when I do some career coaching with people, one of the things I suggest is that they imagine themselves being a superhero. You know what I mean? Like Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman or the Black Panther or somebody, okay? Every superhero has a superpower. And I think it's very important for the leader of an organization or then the leader of a department or a business unit or, a leader of any sort to understand what their superpower is, what that one thing is that they excel at, and make sure that that is what they focus on, and that they augment that with people that are, have complementary superpowers. And this even comes down to, call it internal functions within a business. You and I have talked about learning platforms and learning environments in the past, for instance. And, the OpEx Society and Readiness Institute has one, and I don't want to get into that too deep. But what does amaze me is that companies will want to devote the time and resources to create their own because they think they're special, and they're not. I hate to break it to you out there in the audience. If you make product, everybody makes product. Now, you might make it a little bit different, but gravity works at your business the same way it works at everybody else's business. Okay, it doesn't work any different. We want to make sure that you can put your own material in there to make a generic curriculum, your curriculum over time, but you don't want to create it from scratch because there's no useful purpose. It's not core. I'll give you an example of one conversation I had. They wanted to put in an OpEx training and education environment. This is a healthcare network. And they're really considering going down the path with us. And they decided not to because they're going to develop themselves internally. Now, we have like 200 modules, okay, 180 modules, call it 200 modules in our environment. They started out with 5 modules. And I asked their director of OpEx, who's going to do this? Who in your organization is going to do this? First off, who's got the talent? Because you guys, take care of patients. You don't develop curriculum. This is non-core. This is not your, in your wheelhouse. And he points himself to his own chest. He goes like this. And it's like, you're going to create this? And he says, yeah, I'm going to be I'm charged with creating it. And I said, well, how much time do you have? I mean, in addition to everything else you got going on, how much time do you have to devote to creating this curriculum? And he goes like this, nothing, none.
Yeah.
Okay. So here he is. I mean, this is, I don't want to call this climbing Mount Stupid because it's not, because he already knew what was happening. He was being set up for failure. Mm-hmm. And my definition of being set up for failure is if you've got accountability and responsibility, but no authority. So he was expected to create this stuff, but it was only him. He had no backup. He had 0 time. So a year and a half later, when he finally left, and they still hadn't had a learning environment, this was, a foregone conclusion, right? So that it wasn't complete or anywhere near complete or probably not even started was a foregone conclusion. So, you got to know your hard. You got to choose your hard. Either create it or buy it. But the thing is, they lost a year and a half
and more
of opportunity. Right. Yeah. And more. Right. At the end of the year and a half, it was just somebody at the end of the year and a half. Right. Yeah. Right. So.
Yeah. Wow. And I know our story, I wanted to create something like what the Operational Excellence Society and the Readiness Institute has. I wanted to make our own. And then I saw what you guys had and I went, oh, that's it. Not only is it there and in existence already, it's better than what I could create with my resources in 2 or 4 years. I mean, it would take me so long to catch up. Why not just use that one, right? And add on to it. So,
no kidding. There's like 50 man years in its development. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're not looking at a company that says, well, I'm going to put together a 20 module yellow belt program. That's going to take them 5 man years to create. Simple enough. If they want a robust system, if they want to just do LinkedIn Learning, which is unmeasurable, non-standard work, you can't tell 5 people take the same LinkedIn Learning. You can't judge what the takeaway of each of those 5 people was. It was going to be different, right? So how do you standardize what the knowledge that is being built, and how do you evaluate it is the hard part. Everybody could read a book, right? I mean, you've read my book. There's countless other people that have read my book. Each person that's read my book gets something different out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that what did we get out of it? OpEx Society's Force Multiplier program here, I guess we could call it that, gets you to track the benefits out of what you've created after taking that program, right? Which is a thing I haven't seen in many other places. Most of the time it's, we got training. All right. We went out and we did this project. All right. And then everybody forgot everything and went away and did something else. Oh, and there's no continuation of, hey, what was the positive result of this? What was the benefit of this? And so you've got a nice way of being able to track that stuff.
Well, and it's not me. I mean, there's, a lot of people that were involved in its creation. A lot of my thoughts behind it had to do with my experience in academia. I've been on the advisory board of Binghamton University, assigned to their System Science and Industrial Engineering department for darn near 20 years. Okay, so here I am seeing how students are taught and what the retention rate is. And this is, what I'm looking at is, when a person goes to be trained on whatever it is, Our training has to deal with the broad subject of operational excellence. But if you're being trained on how to change a tire on a 737, okay, that's a different set of training. Okay, so we don't do that. But the person that's being trained on how to do whatever it is that they're going to do has to have a theoretical component and a practical component, and they have to use the theoretical as quickly as possible on a practical application. Otherwise, that knowledge atrophies. So this is a challenge I saw with students going through university, is that they're learning something, but if they're not using it, then it evaporates. That knowledge evaporates. Like I took trigonometry in high school. Okay, I haven't used trigonometry since. I don't, I know sine, cosine, tangent. I know them as words. I know they're associated with trigonometry.
Symbols.
I don't know how to use them anymore. Okay, I did at one time, but I don't anymore because I've never had the need to. The same with training in a business. But a business now is not just, training students in generic stuff to, further their, careers. They're training on something specific to the business wants to use right today. Now, the other challenge, other than atrophy of knowledge because of misuse or non-use, is what I call the one and dones. Everybody comes into these programs, these training programs, and they're learning the theoretical and they're, applying it to some practical project, and then they move on. They're done with their project, or they've got their certificate. Okay, they're a nice little piece of paper for the wall. Okay, but there's no visibility as to whether or not the student ever works on a second, third, or fourth project. Okay, so now our net benefit that we could demonstrate to finance is the net benefit of one project that student did on their practical. Now, if you take the benefit of that one project, and then you take the cost of the OpEx department overhead, doesn't even pay for itself. We don't know. Now, what if not only was there the one project that the student worked on, but a steady stream of subsequent projects the student could work on that we also tracked the cumulative benefit of, and that the student didn't have to worry about having to forage around for a second project. There's already a backlog that's been created. They just take from the top and work on the next one.
That can be a difficult thing too, because I'm a member of a lot of Lean Six Sigma belt groups, basically, right? And certification groups and that. And it's one of the most constant questions I see there is somebody just got their yellow belt or their green belt, and they're like, now what?
Now what?
Going to find projects. And so giving them pointers on, hey, look, here's a way you can set a list up of go-to projects and prioritize them. Where am I going to get the biggest bang for my buck?
Right.
And then with your perspective of bringing OpEx up to the strategic level and doing crazy things like pulling revenue in from the future to today, right? That's some big impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Being the first to market with a product, pulling revenue in. There's 1,000 opportunities beyond cost reduction where OpEx can really have that strategic impact. And I think that we have to, there's a joke about accountants. How can you tell if an accountant is an extrovert? He's looking at your shoes. Okay. So if you think about, OpEx, we want to make sure that the people that are talking about cost reduction and process improvement stop looking at their shoes and start looking at your shoes, and eventually look further and further and further down the road.
I think that sums it up really well. That whole perspective shift that we're looking at, raising the height, being able to look out farther. Stop looking at your own shoes. There might be the core of a book in there. A quick 120-page book. Yeah. Well, Joseph, this has been really great. At some point, I'd like to have you back on. I am studying systems thinking to a level of detail, which is different than the process improvement stuff, folks. It's a different manner of thinking than analytical, which is what I was taught. And when I'm done that, I know that you're really good at the systems thinking. So I'd like to bring you back on, and
Sure.
We can have a discussion of exactly what that is and how it works and how it's different. And I think that would be a lot of fun.
Well, with your interviews and your discussions with the space entrepreneurs, okay, they're all about systems thinking. They're not just making a satellite. They're trying to figure out how it goes into space. How does it communicate? With the materials that are going into it. I mean, all the timing that has to occur for that
Right.
Mission to be successful. So, I mean, you're in deep with systems thinkers when you're speaking to other space entrepreneurs.
Yeah, the order in which things are done is a key thing that we bring to the table. Perspective. So, well,
Excellent.
So anybody who's listening and is interested in the learning system that we've been talking about can come talk to either of us about that. It's probably best for larger organizations. I do have to admit, I think 50 people a year is the minimum to put through that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're probably going to be looking at an organization that is at least 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because if you're less than 1,000 people, you're probably going to be successful with Lean and Six Sigma because you're only 1,000 people. Your horizontal integration at that point should not have become unwieldy.
Right.
It's only really when you start having multiple plants scattered hither and there and multiple business units making different products. I mean, when your business becomes complex, that's when, a program, first off, that's when a program can help. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's also when a learning environment can also, be a life changer. But if you're smaller than 1,000 employees, then you're probably going to be in one or two facilities, probably very close to one another. Of course, it depends on the business, right? That's that's where I would say the cutoff point is.
Okay, and then smaller businesses or just founding who want some gas in the tank for this stuff can just talk to me, and I will
reach out to the OpEx Society, right?
Yep. I can certainly help with structuring that kind of a program, getting you started, getting those fundamentals in place to be a learning organization and not just something, because you mentioned it, right? Two guys have a phone call, they solve a problem. Fantastic. If nobody else ever hears about it or can search for it and find out about it, it basically didn't happen. Right? Except for those two guys. So, what can
I have a mantra called one of Gibbs has his rules and NCIS is one of Paris's rules, is that if it's not written, it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. I never said that. You never committed to this. You really have to capture the wisdom every step of the way.
Right. And match it with authority, darn it, or else you're setting them up for failure. Remember that. All right, Joseph. Well, it's been great to have you on. Thanks a lot for doing this.
Hey, always a pleasure, Jason. Great speaking with you again.
Hey, this is Jason Kanigan, the host of the program. Thanks a lot for listening to the Cold Star Project. If you want me to send you new episodes of the Cold Star Project so that you don't have to go hunting around for them or watching YouTube or anything like that, go to this page, coldstartech.com/MSB. That's short for Make Space Boring, which is what we're all about. And drop in your email address there and I will be able to do that for you. Make Space Boring is another little show that I run. It's a shorter format, quick interviews, and news of the day, and sometimes an update of who I'm meeting and what I'm learning in the space field. It's on the same Cold Star Tech channel. Speaking of which, on the YouTube channel, I can do something I cannot do on the audio-only version, which is add playlists. And so there may be topic area playlists on the YouTube channel that you would be interested in digging into, going down the rabbit hole and learning more about. For example, space law and policy, space situational awareness, the lunar mining and construction and fun stuff like that. So go check that out. That is at coldstartech.com/play. That's the short link to get there. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you soon.